All right. Thank you for bringing your posters. I guess the first really easy, obvious thing, everybody can see what I call food webs. For really little children, there's a lot of cheap activities to reinforce the web visual, but I think that we can probably be okay with this. What happened there? Oh, you covered up rabbit, brush rabbit. All right. I'd like to ask for the longest example food chains in each of these. So you children who did the chaparral, who thinks that they have the longest food chain of the chaparral? Chaparral, kids? Chaparral? Chaparral? Do you have any with 5 species in the food chain, excluding decomposers? 4? Are we all agree with that? Okay, give me a good one with 4.
6.
Yeah, 6.
The sagebrush to the ground squirrel to California king snake to the red-tailed hawk.
Okay. So we're going to go sagebrush. I need to rearrange this space. So children, this is me getting used to a new way of doing the food webs. I've never had 6 before. This is new to my class. So I'm trying to reconsider how to best space these out. Be patient with me. Try to just do this quickly. Sagebrush
Ground squirrel.
feeds a ground squirrel
To California king snake.
to California king snake
To red-tailed hawk.
to red-tailed hawk. And you don't have anything bigger that could eat a red-tailed hawk?
I mean,
Unless you count the black bear.
the black bear.
Probably not.
Oh, there was black bear in the chaparral. Yeah, that's real. Yeah, let's keep that. Sure. So a black bear doesn't usually catch a flying bird.
What if it's injured?
But if it's injured and it's on the ground, that'd be bingo. Yeah, I'd like to include that if you don't mind. Okay, I love that. Thanks. Anybody want to get creative and add something else that was in the chaparral that we could maybe put eating a black bear? Or there was nothing else in the chaparral that eats a black bear?
I mean, a mosquito, but
Oh yeah, parasites, right.
The Joshua tree, the grass.
Watch this.
Church lot.
You could have a little leakage to parasites.
I did the same thing, but we couldn't.
There's like mites and fleas. So parasites like sap a little bit of this energy flow, but they're not going to consume the whole individual. So if you're going to make a strict food chain and you're really focused on those parasites, sure, they could be like getting the energy from these. But when we're trying to map food webs, we consider parasites a leakage. And here's an interesting thing. You can even calculate percentages lost to parasites out of each layer of the food web. So in some ecosystems, especially the tropics, you lose a whole lot to parasites. Stressed organisms are more susceptible to parasites. So if you provide food stress in this environment, like something that hurts the sagebrush, then the ground squirrels would lose a higher percentage, so you would have more energy going to the parasites. We're going to talk a lot about all these little details. I hope you're ready to take notes. There are going to be some things.
on the slab?
What? What?
Notes on the slab or just in general?
All on this topic. today there's like a few things I want to talk about. Okay, so can somebody give me a long one from the redwood forest? Yeah?
Bacteria,
Yeah?
the protist,
Yeah?
the rat, just Stellar's Day,
Let's feed that rat something different.
rat,
What can we feed the rat other than
snake.
protist?
Oh, here, berries, blackberries.
Blackberries? I like seeing black bears eat blackberries.
The rats,
Rats, yeah, that makes sense. Two,
ringneck snakes,
ringnecks. Coincidentally, ringnecks don't eat mammals. That's okay. I probably put the wrong info in there. And
to bobcats, I guess. I don't know, there's a lot of arrows.
bobcat. And is there anything in the Pacific Northwest redwood forest that can eat a bobcat?
Cougar could probably eat a bobcat.
I think so too.
Brown bear.
Brown bears?
White bear.
Oh yeah. I think we could feed that to a mountain lion. That'd be fun. Okay. Of course, parasites can be included in most of these layers. You know, it's possible that you would have an intermediate, like there's insects that eat blackberries that can be eaten by rats. So check this out, kids. I can go to, what's an insect that lives here that eats fruit?
Fertilize.
Yeah. Let's do some kind of a fly. And that can go like that. So the rat can either eat the flies or eat the food of its flies. It can compete with its prey for food. You see what I mean by that? It's like if I eat all the grass, I can't eat a cow that ate the grass. I don't eat grass, so that's easy. But if I eat all the corn, I can't feed my cow, so I can compete with my prey for their diet by eating further on the down the food chain. Everybody understand? Yeah.
It's more efficient to do that, right?
Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about that this year. It's a key point for the college board. The college board really cares about that issue. And you should
Efficiency
too.
or competing with.
It's called trophic efficiency. Yeah. Maybe we'll do it this way in the other periods. God, I'm just a mess. Total disaster. Hello. I think it comes at a later period, but I'll give it to him then. Okay. Coastal estuary. Oh wait. There's another hunter too. Okay. Coastal estuary. Who has a long food chain for this? I like to do this a little faster. I'm going too slow. Jump in. Speak.
Algae.
Uh-huh.
Water boatman.
Uh-huh.
Western fence lizard. And red-tailed hog.
Oh, we could even add a couple. Were there mice in here?
Yeah.
And were there any predatory mammals, like raccoons or something?
Yeah.
Important principle for you to know. Estuaries have two different communities that intermix. You have the aquatic community and you have the terrestrial community. As a matter of fact, in an estuary, you also have fresh water coming from above and salt water, which mixes in at high tide and then flushes out to be cleaned by fresh water at low tide. So estuary community is about the most complex, which means you can throw in the most species. If this guy falls in the water, he can be eaten by things that eat out of the water. You could skip all these little steps. You could have a lizard falling in the water to be eaten by a crab that's eaten by a little fish that's pulled out by a bird that's eaten by a different bird that falls into the ocean to be eaten by another. So you can really add complexity if you want. Because you have multiple diversities, there's a vocab term for that. I'll introduce this now, and I'm sure it'll come up again later. Places where different biomes overlap are called ecotones. That's a place where you have multiple diversities, like freshwater plus saltwater plus terrestrial. That's 3 in this case. Ecotone is a place where multiple diversities overlap. Ecosystems overlap, excuse me. And these have a special quality. It's called the edge effect. Anybody want to guess what happens to species diversity at the edge of an ecosystem? It's higher, that's right. At the edges of an ecosystem, you have higher diversity because you've got the neighboring diversity overlapping. So it's called the edge effect. The idea that diversity is higher at an ecotone where biomes overlap. I'm encouraged to see that many of you are taking notes. Can you grab the kelp forest version of the food webbing assignment? Yeah, and some of those species were mixed in there by accident. There was like rats mixed into the kelp because we had them left over from the Sierra. So we need to replace them with a similar trophic level kelp species. You know what I mean by that? Similar trophic level, but an actual aquatic species that belongs there. Okay. Great example of an ecotone. We have an edge effect. We're going to come back and talk more about that too. Oh, the Mojave's kind of hard living. I wonder how many layers we can get here. Producer who had Mojave super fast, yes?
Oh, Joshua tree.
Yeah, I like those.
Crested grasshopper, red-legged frog, raccoon, common raven.
They hate being called common. Is there anything that can eat a raven?
Red-tailed hawk.
Maybe.
Coyote.
Maybe. Check this out. There's some interesting things that happen where an adult raven versus a small baby red-tailed hawk, the raven would win. Like there's a timeless classic in this conversation when we talk about who eats whom. Does the mountain lion eat a black bear or does the black bear eat a mountain lion? And it just depends who's bigger. In a fair fight, it's probably a draw. But if that if that red-tailed hawk is much bigger than the common raven, or if that coyote can get a red-tailed hawk on the ground. So sometimes we do these dashed lines for maybe. Kind of depends on the circumstances. A coyote could eat a red-tailed hawk, wounded on the ground, sneaks up while it's trying to peck away. But honestly, like if they both see each other coming, no chance. We're doing good things here. And what was this? The Sierra Nevada, could I please have, yeah, thank you.
Alpine grass, which is eaten by the beetles, bat, possibly eaten by mountain lion, possibly eaten by the black bear, possibly eaten by the mushroom.
Okay. That's pretty much always going to happen. That's good. And I guess this is probably the right time to talk about that mushroom thing that you had to say. How the heck do we draw the decomposers? I mean, first of all, just a fun fact, because you all know I'm a mushroom nerd. You guys know I'm a mushroom nerd? Have we talked about this? I'm a crazy kind of mushroom nerd. Okay. Fun fact, Sherman, mushrooms are decomposers, but 99.9% of all mushrooms specifically, like big fungi that form those big things that you see when you walk around, almost every single one of those is a decomposer of carbon bonds that are found, primarily lignin and a few other carbon bonds, that are found in plants, not animals. There are fungi which grow on animals, like dandruff and hallyrot, my spots, and athlete's foot is a fungus. But very rare for a mushroom to actually be the decomposer. But that's okay, I'm going to give you that one anyhow.
You do bacteria to the mushroom.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, you can feed it to another decomposer, that's fine. Yeah, bacteria. Children, where would I draw the decomposers here? What's the right way to include them? Because all these things decompose.
Is it like off to the side where they all get arrows to the decomposers or something?
I think so. We could go like this and include our decomposers as like a recycling mechanism. To kind of bring all things back to the soil. Which kind of feeds the grasses. You all realize that everything decomposes, and it's not like a strict member of the food web, it's just sort of the leftovers of life all come back to being life again. Where all the magnets go? Put them all back.
They're good.
Thank you. And I'm sorry for whoever had to do the kelp. Man, did I mess up on that. I think I've told you already that this was the first year I included multiple ecosystems in this assignment. Multiple biomes. Did I already tell you that?
Yeah.
So I used to just do the Sierra Nevada because I'm most familiar with that biome. But I thought it would be valuable to include others. I'm glad I did it. It's just that now I've got like a little bit of chaos. So the kelp biome does not include the
There's like California king snake.
king snakes don't live in the kelp.
Lizards, frogs, raccoons.
Lizards and frogs and raccoons don't live
bighorn
there.
sheep.
Okay, you can stop. Yeah, bighorn sheep. So I'm not as smart as I look. I'm sorry. A student teacher of mine last year did all this work to expand my assignment into multiple biomes, and she did a wonderful job. But now we have to adjust which species are there. So if you did the kelp, give me a good... Look at this! They fed at least 4 species to the bighorn sheep. Apparently kelp rockfish are eaten by bighorn sheep.
Well, I'm sure they could if they would. What if they could?
Somebody on this assignment didn't take great pride in their arrow selections. Although they did draw some lovely jellyfish. So you win some and you lose some. Could somebody please tell me a food chain that is actually logical for a kelp forest? These would be Alasha, Maya, Liz, and Paloma, if anybody's curious, who fed the rockfish to the bighorn sheep.
Wait, what did they feed the bighorn sheep to do?
It is an apex predator of the kelp ecosystem.
Arrow.
No, I don't think so.
It does.
Does it? Oh yeah, to a raccoon. I'm glad you saw that. So our apex predator of the kelp forest ecosystem is actually the raccoon. Look at that. Oh, but it might occasionally be eaten by a great white shark. If they swim too slow, maybe. This is too much BS for me to handle, but I gotta move on so let's get a food chain. Yes.
Okay, the fanworm goes to the golden trout.
What? There's golden trout? You gotta highlight that one too. We have to replace that with small carnivorous fish. I'm sure you can find one.
To the great white shark. Oh wait, no, to the kelp rockfish.
Okay.
To the great white shark.
Okay.
To the orca killer whale.
Where are the seals?
And for the sake of conversation, since I've made so many errors in this one, we could talk a ton about kelp ecology, but I'm going to move on. Yeah, we could put a seal in the middle. You're right. And that's a dashed line, I think, between great white and the orca. Could go both ways. Do you know that great white hunt the pups of the orca? Did you guys see that earlier this year there was a well-studied pod of orcas where one of the moms gave birth and the baby probably was stillborn, and she carried it around for like 2 weeks, hoping that it would resuscitate or whatever. It's kind of like swam around floating this carcass of its offspring.
Oh. That's real sad.
I had some really good killer whale sightings. So if anybody ever wants to talk about killer whales, hit me up and I'll tell you amazing stories and show you pictures. I was in Santa Barbara Channel last year with a homie of mine. We saw a killer whale bull solo, all by himself, drowning, I'm assuming some sort of mammal.
Are they common in the channel?
What?
Are they common in the channel?
They're definitely present on and off. I wouldn't call them common, but they're not really common in many places, actually. So aside from a few like bays where they spend a big part of the year, I guess it's as common as many other coastal zones. Yeah, I don't know. Predators relative to prey are just not that common, Mm-hmm. Like you'd have a few wolves for every 1,000 deer or whatever, 100 deer. So I guess they probably are common at that ratio, yeah. All right. Let's see if we can't go through a few other layers here.
Wait, drowning.
What?
How would it drown?
No, it's drowning.
Drowning, I know he's drowning a sea mammal.
Mammal.
Oh, mammals, okay. Gotcha.
All right, so we got our decomposers in here. We got our parasites in here. Where would we fit humans? Where do humans fit?
The top of all of these.
Yeah, but we also swipe all the things down below them.
Oh, we're like the decomposers.
Yeah, so we're kind of like the parasites or the decomposers. You could put humans on many levels, and it gets confusing when species eat at many levels. Here's a fancy one. The black bear, get ready for this. A black bear would happily eat a red-tailed hawk, but also a California king snake, but also a ground squirrel.
Also a sagebrush.
And it probably would nibble on some sagebrush. Black bears, like humans, eat at all the different layers. So you could have a really short food chain where it's sagebrush to black bear. But you could put a black bear all the way at the very top. In the right scenario, it'll take out a mountain lion. Wounded mountain lion, a baby mountain lion, big, angry mama black bear. So you've got what we call multi-layered parts. where the omnivores are feeding on many levels. On the other hand, a mountain lion would probably never even mess with remix, snakes, or rats. They'd have to be right there. I guess a mountain lion, if it was like, oh, a rat, like they would eat it. But I don't think it would walk 4 steps to get a rat, honestly. I don't know, maybe not 10 steps. I want to point something out, that we made a distinction today between the simple lines, which are just dietary here, it's like culinary, predatory. Call those trophic lines. And then we had some of these dashed ones. They're like asterisks. You know, like the Babe Ruth record, like meh, kind of. So those dashed lines are life cycle oddities, like, whoa, what happened here? Now I want to ask you a few questions. Well, no, I don't want to ask you any questions yet. I want you to write something else in your notes. Watch. Producer, primary consumer, secondary consumer, tertiary consumers. I'll explain what these are, but first you should know them.
So for the dash lines, if there was a dash line, but then there were solid lines, or would they all be dashed? Like,
Ooh, that's interesting.
Like,
I
say-
feel like they probably could be dashed lower. I mean, you could imagine a scenario where a big rat eats a snake. You know, if it's like a wounded snake or can hurt with dying anyway.
no, I mean like take that one decomposer that you gave over there. Say it was for sure the mountain lions ate bobcats. Would that line be solid even after bobcat line was dashed?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's not like
I think
a
you can.
multiplier.
I think you can. Watch everybody. Producers, they don't eat anything. They store energy in chemical bonds that they create. That's what makes them a producer. They make energy storage compounds. And that's some key terminology. We're going to come back to all of this. But if we're mapping the flow of energy here, you can see that energy definitely flows uphill. This is terminology that you probably want to get used to hearing and maybe even saying. You can say energy flows up from the producers through consumers. We're going to come back to this in 2 future units. Anybody know where producers get all their energy? Where does that energy initially come from, the energy itself?
Soil and sun.
Not the soil,
The sun.
definitely the sun. They get their ingredients from the soil. They get their energy from the sun. And this is a funny thing that, what do we talk about when we eat? Like when Jose eats fish, I get energy from the fish, but I also get stuff from the fish. Like I need the oils for my skin and hair, or I need the calcium for my bones or whatever. So we've got stuff, and yeah, producers get their stuff from the soil. They don't get any stuff from the sun. But with very few exceptions, producers get all of their energy from Jaslov. Yeah,
So then does that mean that decomposers don't use or make any energy?
this is where we get the interesting exceptions. So what makes them a producer is that they build their own energy storage compounds. They get the stuff, and they use energy to stick it together. Then when you break those compounds, you get the energy out. So it's energy storage compounds. This might have come up in the third grade, maybe? Depending on how your teacher said this, I could imagine even first grade you heard these things already. So I just want to make sure that we all have the same baby steps, that we're all starting on the same good footing. They're called producers because they make those bonds that will be broken later by themselves or by the things which consume those bonds. So the ground squirrel cannot produce its own energy storage. It can just digest someone else's energy storage. So it must consume. Here comes a couple of other defining terminologies. Consumers get their energy storage from somebody else. Fine. And then, please look up. Primary consumers are primero, they are the first. So they are the first consumer in the chain, meaning that they, by definition, eat producers. You can say that's an herbivore, because it eats a producer. A vegetarian? Primary consumers eat the producers. Secondary consumers eat other consumers. We call those carnivores because they eat something that ate a plant. And then we have those things that might die without being eaten. This is also known as apex predators. Remember that in the apex predator range, we get a lot of dashed lines. Apex predators are only an apex predator when they're an adult in good health. Like nothing in the ocean will eat a big 22-foot, big mama great white shark. Once you get there, you're safe. Like a big, proud, happy male lion in the savannas, that's truly an apex predator. But a little lion cub honestly could get picked off by a hyena or by a big cat or whatever. Probably get trampled by a, what do you call them?
Gazelle.
The buffaloes? Oh, gazelle even? So, primary, secondary, tertiary, or first, second, third, or herbivore, carnivore, apex carnivore. Remember that some of these could be omnivores, meaning that they operate as third, second, and first, or as second and first. Omnivores operate as second and first, because they could eat another, or they could eat the... Got all that terminology? Are we moving on? Is this easy? How many of you have already learned this? This should have been 7th or 8th, I think. How many of you would have remembered, like, in conversational terms? So I'm kind of filling in a few of you. Yeah?
What ecosystem is our backcountry?
We're mostly chaparral. If you want to get really persnickety.
We don't have black bears, though.
Oh, we sure do, bro. I have on multiple occasions seen black bears in our back. There's an interesting debate that actually some parts of the chaparral ecosystem, a little bit north of us, have a higher density of black bears than the Sierra Nevada today. Okay. Yeah. We got our different levels of consumers and the producers. Look at the stuff that's at the top. In so many of these, it's the same. All across California, check it out. There's your whole hit list of big stuff. In all of your food chains, I'm guessing you have black bear, or mountain lion, or maybe a bobcat. Bobcats, even when they're adults, can be eaten by something bigger, so I don't think a bobcat necessarily gets up there. Bobcat, mountain lion, maybe some of the big birds like red-tailed hawk, great horned owl. In some ecosystems, it could be an osprey, bald eagle, golden eagle. Oh man, bighorn sheep, yeah, only in the kelp. They're only at the top of the kelp, yeah. So most of us have the same. In the ocean, it's definitely the killer whale, great white shark. And I'd like to jump through a couple of your questions really quickly, but I think these are interesting. First of all, it may seem obvious, but what would happen if all the plants died? All the producers.
All the people that ate them, and all the people that ate them, but also that.
You all realize that without them to fix all the sunlight into edible stuff, we would all starve. Like if you got no lettuce, you can eat cows, but if you got no lettuce, what are you going to feed the cow? So pretty soon, producers are the entry point. They're the bridge between the non-living environment and all other life. Producers are the first step in all food chains. They're what takes the abiotic, meaning dirt and sunlight. It's not alive, it's non-living. And all that non-living stuff becomes life at production. Yeah.
So if the producers take those things and make them into the energy chemical things, and then the primary consumers break down those chemical energy things, how do the secondary consumers get
Oh, well, we
energy?
store some.
Okay, so every level
We don't store all of it,
some.
we spend a lot.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about trophic efficiency along the way.
Okay, so they break down some of
Did y'all hear Aiden's question? Because he's getting ahead of me and I want to get back to this, but I guess we should probably make this clear right now. Please look up. Homeboy says, if they digest all of this, what's this guy going to eat? And I answered, when they digest all of this, they store a little bit in the squirrel. So you can still digest a squirrel. Does that make sense to everybody? Like when I digest food, I usually work it off or I poo it out, but I do have a little extra. Somebody could decompose useful things out of my bones, out of my muscles, even out of my dead skin cells if we get all microscopic about this. Now, what would happen if all these decomposers went extinct? This is a fascinating idea. You must know the technical terminologies that come in this answer. And dang it, we're going to hit the bell right at the worst time. We got to somebody make a line where we left off today, but what would happen if all the decomposers went extinct?
The whole system collapsed.
Why? Like, what would it look like? Describe the environment.
Full of dead things with no nutrients.
Full of dead things. Why full of dead things?
There's nothing there to get rid of the dead things.
So why no nutrients?
Has nutrients. Huh?
Why? What? Wouldn't there be anything alive that could eat all those dead things?
I mean, not if they're super dead.
Hey, that's what all the decomposers are. Keep in mind that decomposing is just eating all the dead stuff. So yeah, they'll be super dead. How would that smell, by the way?
Terrible.
PG.
Wouldn't there be like a lot of illnesses spreading?
Maybe, like in that moment of die-off, it would be pretty grim. Yeah, everybody would be kind of stressed because there's nothing else bringing up energy from underneath because you've run out of nutrients because everything is stuck. Yeah.
Without the decomposers, a lot of toxins would get into the soil and make it difficult for plants to grow. And like for the decomposers that kill undergrowth, it make it difficult for plants to grow. So then back to getting rid of the producers.
I'm curious if there would be more toxicity or less, actually. Because once toxicity is fixed inside biomass, there'd be nothing to get it out. Right?
Instead of the decomposers taking it out.
Right. Decomposers kind of keep a lot of stuff in play because they bring it back to the earth to use again.
Wouldn't it smell just fine?
It would smell great.
Decomposers are the things that make everything smell.
Decomposers are the things that make it smell. It would just be dried out life. The earth would be covered in a dust of mummies.
That's real grim.
Because you would desiccate, like all the water would evaporate out.
What would that mean for the ecosystem?
Well, there wouldn't be any. Because here comes the conceptual thing that I hope I get to finish, and the bell's definitely going to ring. Here's how life works. Watch. Watch me. Watch me. Raw building blocks of life are basic nutrients. There's a few that are really important. Producers use sunlight to stick those together into organic compounds, the macromolecules, proteins, carbohydrates, sugars. Stay with me for a second. Producers make the big compounds, and decomposers get those last little scraps of energy out, leaving those ingredients for more life. Without the decomposers, we would die, and all of our proteins, our fats, our sugars would stay with us. They would never be broken apart again. And so we would have no raw ingredients to build more life. We would have an organic wasteland that hasn't broken back down into building blocks. Bye, Joe. Somebody make a line on their notes so we can pick up here tomorrow. Could you please stop streaming?